Welcome to another episode of Unbuffered, a show without a proper intro yet, but I'm working on it. Sean, do you have any magic for our intros here?
I've been thinking about it too. I need to sleep on it some more, though.
This is the 20th episode. I feel like, it took me several hundred episods to get that.
I was going to ask you about
intro
that.
For
Really?
for community broadband bits. Yeah, I mean, it was like, it evolved quite a bit. But, now that I have 800 shows under my belt, you think I would be better at this. I'm Chris Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, talking with Sean Gonsalves, my partner in crime on the podcast often. Sean runs our communications as Associate Director for Communications in the Community Broadband Networks program at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, which he does from Cape Cod. Welcome.
That's right. Cape Cod, it's raining today, boy, I tell you, but we've had a beautiful summer season so far, so I can't complain too much about the rain.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll find a way to, though. Today we're going to talk about a piece that Sean was working on in Massachusetts there, where the state is doing some pretty cool stuff around the oldest the oldest apartment buildings and things like that in the state, which means it's some of the oldest stuff in the nation, because that's how it rolls in Massachusetts.
That's right.
So we're also going to talk about Wyndham Net, which is a network in Minnesota that is selling itself, one of the smaller networks in the nation, and it's being purchased by a local provider. And they're probably going to talk a little bit about upstream capacity growing a lot. And then we've got a what the tech.
That's right.
And Sean's got a little surprise for folks. So, and as I understand it, it's going to actually have a visual component. So if you were thinking about that YouTube feed that we got, you're primarily audio, you might want to hop over there.
That's right.
But before we go into it, Sean's just ready to get going. I wanted to say this. So I'm terrible at self-promotion. And I think it's because of my deep-seated feelings of inadequacy. Like, I don't want to tell people to support me. But like, we've done 20 of these shows and some people have said that they like them a lot, but like, we haven't had a review. And I'll just say that, like, if someone wants to put a 5-star review up on some of this stuff, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's a site where we've been reviewed, but the ones I was looking at, we had no reviews. So, you want to hook us up? You could write a check. You can go to ilsr.org/donate for the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, ilsr.org/donate. But if you can't do that, you could do a review and give us some support there. So we would love it. And then also, if you listen through to the end of the show, there'll be several other podcasts from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, I think all of whom get more listens now than my shows. So I'm the oldest, but I'm still the worst at this work, it seems like. So Sean, we're going to talk about Massachusetts. What's going on there?
So late last month, the officials from MBI, Mass Broadband Institute, which is the state's broadband office, and Community Broadband Networks America, no relation to us, actually. They are an independently
you didn't know? That's what pays your salary.
That's right. I wish. They're an independently owned fiber internet service providers, but they were at this event at the Southbridge Housing Authority, 2 properties there, about 150 residents live in both of the buildings. Elderly, fixed income, some living with disabilities, and they were there to celebrate the state's residential retrofit grant program, which is really about paying the cost to rewire a lot of the old housing stock you were talking about in Massachusetts. This is part of the country where a lot of apartment buildings have a lot of old wiring, and so, believe it or not, there's a good amount of old apartment buildings across the state that, even though they have high-speed internet access available to them, meaning like the network's available like right outside their walls, right by the building, but the wiring in the building does not support high-speed internet connectivity. So it's a real problem. So if you've got this money going out the door, you're building these new networks, you want, especially in these dense, affordable housing units where a good chunk of people who do not have internet access live. And so this program was designed to address that. And so it started off, we first wrote about it, I think it was in April of 2024 when they launched it. It was going to be this $22 million pilot, and now it's grown to $74 million statewide. So it's really off like gangbusters over the past couple of years, and most of that money's committed now. 99 housing operators, 6 providers. The initial target was 22,000 units, but now they think the program will cover 32,000 affordable housing units across the state.
Yeah, and it's a big deal because, like you said, if you want to talk about families that are on the edge, families who are in poverty, where their affordability is a big issue, they're generally not living in single family homes. Right. And they're probably in an apartment building. And the apartment building owners, whether they are public housing or whatever that means anymore, by the way, it might be a city agency, it might be some
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit corporation. I don't fully understand all the different permutations we've developed for it. But like, I'll just say that my experience in dealing with these folks is we have, and we're not going to get into the politics of housing, which I'm not equipped to deal with a lot, but my perception is that there's not been enough funding allocated for these facilities. And so when people have to make hard decisions and you're dealing with like, oh, we got a leaky reef, we've got a leaky roof. When you've got the roof leaking and you're thinking, all right, well, this month we can afford to fix the roof or we can rewire the building, I can see how the roof is going to take precedence. So, so I just feel like it's difficult for a lot of these facilities to get on top of internet access, and programs like this make the difference. Not many states have done this. And so we really wanted to note that. I mean, this seems like a program that is working not just from the perspective of the state, but it also seems to be working from the perspective of the internet service providers and from the residents. That's the most important part there at the end. And I think maybe you have a story or two from some of the residents.
Yeah, I mean, so, one of the residents there, you just talked about what it really meant for them on fixed income and, being able to do telehealth and stuff like that. Part of the program, too, and part of the incentive. So they did 5 competitive grant rounds, and so they built into the, awarding of the grants, or, you get extra points for doing different things like on-site digital skills training and things like that. So CBN America is doing that at Southbridge. Device programs, things of that nature. So that was cool about the story. And then the other thing I thought that was kind of interesting is that since they launched this program, 3 independent service providers have come into the state that previously hadn't even been in the state. So this was like enough of a carrot to get them to set up shop. I think it's AirVivo, CBN America, and I think Hawk Networks is the other one, which I'm not familiar with. But those 3 came into the state. There's 6 overall. These projects touch all regions of the state. And like you said, so Massachusetts has this retrofit program. We haven't yet followed up to see kind of like where New York's similar program is. There's a similar program in the state of New York. And then, if memory serves, I think Nevada tried to establish a program like this some time ago. I think we heard rumors that it didn't, they weren't getting a lot of bites.
Yeah, they ignored my email and requesting, I asked Mr. Mitchell, a guy who runs the Nevada office, or did at the time, and he ignored me. I guess maybe he thought I was like his brother seeking like to argue about the inheritance or something like that. I don't know.
Right. Well, so to me, like if we pull the lens back on this a little bit, I think it's interesting because it reminds me of something that you talked about going back to when I first came to the ILSR, which was 6 years ago now, which, wow, time flies. But just how, so there's all this federal dollars, all these programs out there to try to build new networks across the country. And we knew early on with the BEAD program that a lot of non-rural communities weren't going to see a lot of BEAD dollars. And yet a lot of folks who do not have reliable internet connectivity don't live in rural America. They live in, urban communities or suburban communities and what have you. And so, when we talk to different communities, I know that that was something that you like to talk about, is that, well, instead of like thinking about like, say, even building a municipal network for the whole city or a citywide network, target areas where you can really do something and multi-dwelling units, affordable housing units are some areas where you can really move the needle. So I think this program is smart. It's new, so we'll see how it goes over the years. I mean, one of the benefits of the program as well that they had built into the grant program was that any ISP that participated would offer like a low-cost offering. So, you're talking in the range from, say, $10 to $35 a month, which is pretty good for 100 symmetrical connection. It's not a gig, but 100 symmetrical, especially in some of these units where you've got, maybe, a senior living by themselves or something like that. I mean, that's plenty of connectivity, and it's reliable, because we're talking about, in all of these, pretty much all of these instances, we're talking about fiber connections. I think there are some wireless stuff mixed into this, but it's mostly fiber.
Right. I think you talked about there's a preference for, or a requirement for Cat 6
Right.
or fiber.
Right.
There's always nuances around this. I mean, one of the things I've learned about this is to be humble. The number of problems you run into trying to put wires in these buildings, it staggers the imagination. But Cat 6 Ethernet is going to be able to get you 10 gigabit anywhere in the building. And so even if that plan right now is 100 megabit, and we agree, I would say that like it's reasonable for a person living alone or something like that. That's not limited by the technology at this point anymore. That is a business plan. And so the building is wired for decades to come, which is a key point.
That's exactly it. It's wired for decades to come, which of course is a big reason why we were always, have always been so hot to trot on, why we wanted the fiber prioritization to remain in the BEAD program, because when you're building these kind of connections, you want them to last for decades and not have to, shoot satellites into the air every few years and that kind of thing. So
you shoot the satellites out of the air, technically, Sean.
right, out of the air. That's right.
I did, when you were saying that, I did a previous thing. I just wanted to note, I come back to this frequently, and I have nothing but respect for the organizing work that was done in Seattle around municipal broadband. And you had a mayor who ran probably 10, 12 years ago now on municipal broadband, and then through big city politics, decided not to do anything. You had a citizen movement that pushed for it. And at that time, I don't know, I learned a few lessons. I think we watched what happened in San Francisco with this thing of just like, why would I go small with something that will work when I could do something big that almost certainly won't? And the point being that city council members cannot become president of the United States without being governor of their state, and they can't be governor of their state if they don't do something huge in the city they can take credit for. And so the incentives are often wrong for people to pursue meaningful projects that will make a difference, that have a reasonable budget. Instead, they reach for unreasonable things. Not unreasonable, perhaps, but things that are just so much harder to align and get everything together. And I just come back to this, you have Massachusetts moving forward here. You have Newark having done such good work that we've covered in the past because they were incremental, rather than in Seattle, where folks, I feel like you could have argued for Seattle to set aside a few $1 million, maybe $10 million a year to go after discrete public housing projects and stuff like that in neighborhoods that really could have used it. And they went for $1 billion instead in terms of going citywide fiber optics. And man, it would be great if the city that, it's one of the cities that have municipal electricity. And if that utility had wanted to go in that direction and everything had lined up, it could be amazing. I don't know. It could have ended poorly. But like the simple fact is, in a lot of places, a simple plan that targets the people that most need the help with some sort of plan where you can then build trust and expand upon it. It's a smart move that we don't see often enough.
And I mean, look, I'll say this though. You're absolutely right, but also that I have a lot of sympathy for that mayor. I'm kind of like a go big or go home kind of person. So I would have been really tempted to be like, we're going to do it all. We're going to build a municipal network across the city. It's going to be great. I'm low key rooting for New York City to, they've kind of, brought this idea, or at least the public advocate's office there in the city have brought this back to the fore, this idea of a municipal network. Probably never going to happen in New York City, despite Mandani doing a lot of things that nobody thought could be done. But I doubt we'll see it in New York. But to your point, to your practical point, I think it's really important to not be, what's that phrase about not letting like the perfect be the enemy of good enough, or the good,
that's basically it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you can really make a difference in ways that are really meaningful to places like people that are living in affordable housing and things like that, without, necessarily going let's build a municipal network and who cares what the market says, or who cares like what the landscape looks like. We're just going to try to do it, and then it blows up in your face. That would be not good.
I mean, the other thing that if I was to argue your point against mine, you frequently argue against me in this way of, like people don't want to rally around some sort of incremental little plan, right? It's like, what do we want? Like a little bit better. When do we want it? 10 years would be nice.
That's right. That doesn't have the same ring, right?
Yeah. So, but I'll just say like tens of thousands of people's lives being improved. It's a pretty big deal,
Yeah,
in
it is.
Massachusetts here. So,
No
all right,
doubt.
I want to move on to a place where there are not 10,000 people, where I believe there are 4,600 people. Windham, Minnesota, which is southwest Minnesota, where we have a state park that has bison. And if you want to get there from the metro, you got to go through Windham, which is it's a pretty cool little town. They've got public power. And in like 2002, they had a referendum to say, they had actually a municipal cable network back in the day. And it had gotten to the point at which they needed to replace it. And they were like, I don't know if we really want to do this thing or not, but like the internet was really important and they had very poor internet access. And at that time, the telephone company that served them was Qwest, and which was US West before that, and later became CenturyLink and is now AT&T. And there was this referendum, and in the community, Qwest was like, I think it was Qwest at that time, was like, no, vote no, and we'll build you a better system. And so they voted no on a fiber optic system, and Qwest was like, cool, we're going to build you DSL next year. And the next year came and they were like, maybe next year, maybe not. Who knows? Like, it's complicated out there. It's a whole world where we have to make these complicated investment decisions. And so the city was like, well, fooled me once. All right. But like the second time they voted on it, they built themselves a fiber network. And I learned a lot about this over the years because it was a boogeyman for CenturyLink, or Qwest, whatever they were at the different times in the legislature, who would be like, oh, you don't want to be like Windham, Minnesota, where it's this horrible, horrible disaster. And so I talked to Dan Olson, the guy who built it, who really did a great job. And then there was a falling out a few years back. He went to Finley Engineering, and then he actually passed away, I believe. He's a great guy. I learned a lot from him over the years. And we wrote about him in one of the reports. We did 2 reports on Minnesota. I think we referenced this story in both of them. And the thing is that like they actually did very well financially. This is a tiny network, right? I mean, it has like 1,900 subscribers, which is like 4,600 people means there's like 2,000 people living there. There's like,
right.
Like every last person had a service from this network, but like it's very hard to run a network on that size. And so they had a business plan and they came close to meeting it. And around the time that they were supposed to break even, there's this company called Fortune Trucking. And Fortune Trucking had a facility a little bit outside of town. Does this sound familiar? I've told the story a couple times.
Exactly, yes.
Because it's so, for me, it just really, it's such a good example. And Fortune Trucking, around like, I want to say like, it was like 2009, 2011, something like that. This was a time of IT changes. The trucking industry was going through a lot of changes. And they needed to have a fast, reliable connection that would support a new IT package so they could do immediate bidding on trucks and loads to move from place to place. And so they talked to the telephone company, which may or may not be the same one that was in the town, and because they were located just outside of town. And that company was like, yeah, we'll totally hook you up. We'll do a great job. Like you should buy that IT system. So they put all this money into this IT system, and they ordered the service, and that big company was like, oh, turns out we didn't really do our due diligence. We're not going to build that for you. So you could have this DSL or something, And Fortune Trucking, they called Dan, and the way Dan related to me, Dan said literally, get your butt out here, because like we're going to be moving like 50 jobs to New Mexico if we can't work something out. And so, for a small network like this, building a new fiber line, like a couple miles to get to this facility, it's a big deal. And it's the difference between breaking even or not. And so they decided, and I don't know who, I assume there's some sort of like, exposure to, like local leadership, but they were like, yeah, we want to keep these jobs in the community. We want to keep them here. So they built the fiber line out, and like that cost was a significant part of the reason that they did not break even when the business plan called for them to break even. And so they had to go into a little bit of a deficit, I guess, and they got some public dollars. And frankly, this is exactly the way we want these systems to work, right? Like it's charging a low, reasonable price, not enough to have like a big war chest to like build out a town suddenly, but like they made a decision and it was the right decision to keep these jobs in the community. And then they get savagely roasted in the Capitol over and over again as though they're fools that don't understand how to run a network. So anyway, Wyndham is like, it's this network that like they hung on, they figured out how to make it work. They had this fiber to the home network and they were limited in the speeds they could offer because at that time in Southwest Minnesota, you couldn't get a fiber line at a reasonable price to get back to Minneapolis to get the real nice contracts, to get backhaul to Chicago and to have really fast connections. So they struggled. They made it work, and now they have decided to sell the network.
Yeah, the
they're
story
selling
makes
it
me
to
sad. I mean, it makes me sad, actually. You know?
I agree. Now, it looks like they're getting a good deal with it. And I think it's worth talking about because a lot of communities, when they sell their network, it looks like they've screwed up. And, like there's like this debt that has to be repaid and maybe the sale doesn't cover all the debt. And there's people that make all of these pronouncements about like, oh, it's failed, because of this, that, and another thing. And they're often not actually taking into account the full costs and benefits of the network. And it's often they're just coming up with some silly thing based on their whatever the idea they woke up with in the morning, they just applied it to this issue without doing the research. So you see that sort of a thing around this analysis. But when we looked at it, it looked to me like it's a pretty good deal. The city's going to get some services. The techs, I think there's 4 people working at the network. They'll be able to continue working it under this new entity. I think it's a local co-op, but I wasn't totally sure. And we decided to talk about this before.
At least it's a locally based operator.
Yeah, no, it's totally regional in Southwest Minnesota. And it's one of the things, like they had helped to build Southwest's, I forget exactly what it's called, but there was a program. There was 8 local small towns. I mean, these are tiny farm towns in Southwest Minnesota. They built a fiber network and they actually used the Wyndham Net head end for a lot of their services for a lot of years while they were getting established. That was with the ARRA program under Obama. And so like it catalyzed a bunch of stuff. This region is better off. I mean, Toro, which is a major manufacturer in Minnesota, they bragged about how their facility in Wyndham had like better internet connectivity than their factories in the Twin Cities. I think like their manufacturing facility in Wyndham or around Wyndham had better internet access basically than like their corporate headquarters or something. Like I don't recall exactly what it was, but like this is a network that did well. But at the end of the day, if you have 2,000 subscribers, it is hard to keep that working. And so, like you got to find a way to work with others. In this case, they're privatizing it. I think it's sad. Like I have that negative reaction, but I also feel like, it's their decision. They made it. It seems like they negotiated from a position of strength. And so I'll just say like one of the things that woke me up in doing this work was how much people lie. And by that, I mean the lobbyists, right? Like this lobbyist for CenturyLink, he would just say whatever he felt like in St. Paul. And I forever will have a feeling about elected officials that I appreciate their sacrifice. And I want to respect the fact that they're doing that. Someone needs to step up and make decisions and things like that. I respect that.
Yep.
But like when you just sit there and you listen to people who lie and then you make decisions as though you can trust them, for me, like I feel alienated from the process every time I would see this guy speak and be treated as though he was saying something that was true. When everyone knew that if he went to work for the cable company, he would say something different the next week. And if he went to work for the cities, and some people did that, they would switch and work for the cities after that, and they would just contradict themselves. And I don't know, like Travis and Kim and Doug would make fun of me for like my whole, like, I don't know, like naive waif sort of thing, but like, it's gross. And like, there's facts out there. And the facts are Wyndham had a network that provided a lot of local benefits. It didn't always pay for itself, but it always seemed worth it to me.
Yeah. Well, when your job requires for you not to see the truth or whatever, and your livelihood's attached to it, amazing lies can happen. But speaking of lies and the story, it makes me wonder, maybe we need to get ahead of this and write like a post-mortem kind of a thing, because I just have this feeling, because we've seen these campaigns pop up about how municipal broadband is a failure. This is probably going to join the list of examples. And so it might be worth, at least providing kind of some of the context and the nuance that goes into these things, because otherwise you're liable to see this pop up as an example of failed municipal broadband and why government-owned networks, are never a good thing.
Yeah, I agree with that, except for one key detail.
Mm.
There's no us. There's you. You should write this.
Right.
I'd be willing to do an interview or two with you if you'd like.
Okay. All right. So let me add that to my list of things to follow. But yeah, that like you said, it seems like it worked out. It's going to work out well for them. And at the end of the day, if you're a subscriber, if you're a resident, you just want your internet to work, and for it to be reasonable in terms of cost. So if that is what's going to happen, then it's kind of like let the chips fall where they may kind of a thing. It's just like I say, it always makes me a little sad when I hear these stories that I don't think happen very often, but where you've got a municipal network that ends up being privatized. But in this case, you said it may be a local co-op or something, or at least if it's a an independent community based provider, then that oftentimes is that still gives the that kind of that accountability to the community and the tie into the community, and not like just people that are just trying to like send money to shareholders someplace.
Yeah, there's a network out of Iowa I'm on that we watched what they were doing. They're a private company, and it seemed like they were making good investments. And I was just talking with someone in the industry, and when I was mentioning Duluth had been considering building a targeted network to connect to the lowest income neighborhoods, starting with apartment buildings, and then had a new mayor. The mayor pulled back on that project. And I was saying I was surprised, and I was hoping that they pull it back. And that person came back to me that I was talking to and said, oh, I'm On is actually building there. And I was like, really? I was like, who owns them now? And I was like, some private equity. He's like, yeah, they're called Goldman Sachs. Maybe you've heard of them. So I'm predicting that I'm On won't be that great moving forward, unfortunately.
That's too bad. Yeah.
On the other hand, they can build much faster, and Charter Spectrum desperately needs to not be the only option in Duluth, because people in Duluth deserve much better than what Charter's been giving them. I'll tell you that. Speaking of which, cable companies have been improving their networks, and this is something that I'll probably bring up with next time we bring Doug on. But there's another Open Vault report about how people use their connections. And Sean, as the cable companies have significantly increased people's ability to upload things, do you know what is happening?
I'm going to guess that they're getting better at maybe not the symmetrical stuff, but getting better at delivering more upload capacity,
But what's happening as they do that?
What do you mean, what's happening?
So what's the effect then for the families that are suddenly having more upload capacity?
Well, that means that, you're not, pausing like this in the middle of a Zoom every 2 seconds and stuff like and stuff like that. I mean, you got to now with so much Zooms and you work from home where you have to send stuff upstream. You need that capacity, and so it kind of had to happen, I guess, at some point, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's an interesting question, because the argument from the think tanks that work for the big cable and telephone companies had been, there's no killer app. People don't want to upload a lot. Look at how little they upload. And every time they increase the upload speeds that are available, people upload more, which to me suggests that the limiting factor is not the applications. It is, fiber users use more upload than cable users. Why? Because they can.
Because they can. But something else too, it's like, one thing that bothers me about what you're hitting on about the, downloads, the only thing that matters kind of thing, is it's like, we're only supposed to be consumers. We're only supposed to get stuff, everything is a one-way street. Sell you stuff, you download, you're the recipient. There's no productive capacity on there's no expectation that people actually want to contribute or move stuff in a different direction. So,
well, you and I have touched on stuff like this before. I mean, I'll just say it's the 250th celebration of the Declaration of Independence. It's a big freaking deal. And the founders, they got a number of things wrong, but they wanted us to be a nation of producers. They set it up. And they also wanted free speech. And then as soon as they got in power, they started passing laws to restrict freedom of speech.
Right.
What's interesting is they wanted us to be a nation of producers, but they also held true to that when they were in power. And so there's a lot of things they did. The Northwest Ordinance, in terms of how we redistributed the stolen land from the Native Americans, I'm not saying that this is like, all great history, but the
Right.
simple fact is they wanted to make sure that it was settled by people and not by corporations. They wanted to make sure that it was like, families had a chance to like develop the land and things like that. They recognize the importance of distributed power. And so, I feel like this whole idea that you're hitting on is just like, that's what we're building for. We want people to have really good internet connections so they can consume if they want to, but they can produce if they want to, and that they'll be inspired to produce.
Right. And obviously not that consumption is like inherently evil or a bad thing, but yes, we want a society of folks who have the ability to produce, to contribute, and not just be passive, receivers of whatever the corporations are handing down or what have you. So, I'm all for that founding ideal. It's almost as if, people have forgotten that. Not everybody, but man.
I don't know. I never learned it. I had to read it like a few years ago. like the Northwest Ordinance. I was just like, how did I know about this thing? I'm like literally like looking it up on there. Cause I'm like, I'm reading this book and I've talked about liberty from all masters. Like I love it. It's big focus of that book.
Yep.
And, but I was just like, this was never anything that was taught to me. And, you learn about like the gold or the land rush in like Oklahoma and stuff like that, but like not why it's important. Mm-hmm. And again, I'll just say like gross that like, it wasn't like, it's not like it was land that was unused. So, all right, Sean, you have, something for us. I think I'm supposed to say, what the tech?
What the tech? All right. I'm let me get my prop for this.
I'll just say that for the listeners, we suddenly have Sean wearing a pair of aviators, shaded sunglasses. You're going out to Fallon Air Force Base to take part of Top Guns, and this is what we're talking about, right?
We're talking about how the FCC recently approved this company Reflect Orbital's application to test this single satellite Arendelle 1. It's going to be this like you unfurl this giant mirror that's designed to like beam reflected sunlight down to a spot on Earth. So imagine like this big gigantic flashlight on, I think something about 5 kilometers wide, I think and here's their vision is this is the first step towards what they're calling sunlight on demand. And the company plans to have more than 50,000 of these mirror satellites in orbit by 2035. So the FCC approved this despite opposition from astronomers, the public, all of these like real safety concerns. So why this? I mean,
it literally sounds like something where like Austin Powers is going to like show up and be like, you want me to turn off the light at night? $1 billion.
Exactly. So why it's a bad idea? Here's my quick rundown on that. Besides the fact that the American Astronomical Society warns that this reflected light could cause real eye damage to amateur astronomers, there's sudden flashes that during mirror repointing, which, by the way, has to happen every 4 minutes, could disrupt pilots and drivers. The reflected light could disrupt circadian rhythms, plants, animals, and humans. That's pretty important. Sensitive detectors on like research telescopes, it could jack all of that up. At full scale, the constellation is expected to disrupt circadian rhythms broadly, not just in isolated test areas. And the FCC, they essentially punted like on the broader risk assessment and basically said, yeah, we'll get to the 50,000 satellite. We don't even really regulate this stuff, and we'll worry about the 50,000 satellite constellation, I don't know, like next generation or leave it, So there's like this huge regulatory gap. So when I first saw this proposal and then what seemed to be a quick approval, I was like what could go wrong? Like, and also I'm thinking this could be totally used as a weapon.
Yeah, I'd have some sympathy for the Federal Communications Commission basically being like, well, we're only supposed to review this one aspect of it. And so the fact that it's a bad idea is actually not a part of our review process. I have some sympathy for that.
I guess.
But I do feel like someone needs to be able to hit the brakes here. One of the articles I saw about this suggested that a person was like, yeah, maybe a farmer would like to have like their plants always in the sun. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I learned in like 8th grade biology that like that doesn't work well. Like plants have, I don't know, a billion years of evolution to like night and day. And like, it's a thing, like
That's it. I
I'm
mean,
amazed at some of the stuff that I see. But yeah, like, I mean, it's just, I mean, they talk about, being able to like use photovoltaic cells at night. Yeah, that would be kind of cool, I guess, if not for the huge downsides.
and that's it, man. Like, I don't know, toying with, like you said, planetary history and evolution and, scientific laws and the way life kind of the rhythms of life. It just feels like, this is just one of these like money grabs of like, it sounds like it'd be a cool, like sci-fi idea to be able to like, oh, there's a emergency in this area. Let's turn the lights on in this like one little area so that, they can rescue, I don't know, something. But to
It's
me,
always public safety, Sean. That's why we need Flock, because people's dogs run away,
right.
so we can't have privacy.
Yeah, public safety and children. I mean, do it for the kids, right?
Do you not want them to find the child that's lost at 4 a.m., Sean?
I do, but I want them to do it the old-fashioned way. You know what I mean? With flashlights and dogs.
Yeah. No, I can't help but think that this is like one of those things that it's frustrating that this is the way it's happening, but also I don't know if I don't want to pick on our listeners from, I don't know, let me just say Brazil, right? And if Brazil had done this and okayed this launch, I can imagine maybe more people being upset.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the United States has this like arrogance of like, yeah, we can decide what happens to the planet. And,
yeah, definitely.
But I am worried that if the United States says, no, we're not going to allow this, you will see powerful moneyed interests looking to places where they could build a space program, because you can do it with private dollars now and start to figure out how to do this stuff without permission. And there's the sci-fi stuff, like, I mean, there's interesting sci-fi books that have dealt with different scenarios, but it's not pretty. And, there's I'm not a whole one world order UN guy. I don't know if people realize that or not. Like I'm not in support of black helicopters, and I don't think there are black helicopters out there, but like at a certain point, we need to figure out how to resolve this stuff.
No doubt. Or otherwise, well, we'll save that for another What the Tech. I was going to mention, one of Elon's rockets is supposed to slam into the moon sometime soon, and we're going to see what happens.
No, I saw that, and so I think Ship 13 is considered mostly a success, although there's some issues. And 14 is supposed to launch in about 3 weeks, I think is the expectation. This could be the first orbital launch where it actually is trying to get out of suborbital and then coming back into reentry in order to then be caught and to show that it's reusable. And it's a pretty big test that I'd be pretty surprised if it passes. So
yeah, I'll be looking. I love I love following this stuff and space, and then so when I see even this giant mirror thing, it just struck me as bizarre. But 50,000 satellites, I mean, it's not like there's not a lot of stuff up there already. Like, what could go wrong?
I'll say here's a bonus one. There's I just saw a talk today. I had not seen this before, but like there's talk about a number of people have said that we need to set up a decontamination facility on the moon, like a quarantine on the moon, because there's 2 different programs that are aiming to bring back Martian soil to Earth. And people were basically like, look, like, we don't want to mess around with this, like, and we should set up a station on the moon where we can just leave things for a while to really do some like science and study it, to know if there's some sort of like life form that could be extremely harmful to, like, again, a billion years of evolution on Earth. Like, it would be nice to know about it while it was on the moon, rather than like after it's in like, China or Houston or wherever they take it apart, So,
man, the wannabe sci-fi writer in me's got all kinds of ideas right now.
Yeah, I watched 1 or 2 of those movies, and they scared me too much. They're I get very tense, so I'm gonna sit this one out.
No doubt.
All right, Sean. Thank you.
All right. Fun as always.
So, folks, I was gonna say, folks, don't forget ilsr.org/donate and 5-star reviews. I tried to interrupt less this time. So let us know how that's going too. So Sean appreciates it.
Yes.
And I know Jordan appreciates it on the editing.
For sure.
All right. Have a good week, y'all.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Unbuffered podcast. We have transcripts for this and other episodes available at ilsr.org/podcast. While you're there, check out our other podcasts from ILSR, including Building Local Power, Local Energy Rules, and the Composting for Community podcast. Email us at podcast@communitynets.org with your ideas for the show. Follow us on Blue Sky. Our handle is @communitynets. You can catch the latest research from all of our initiatives by subscribing to our monthly newsletter at ilsr.org. While you're there, please take a moment to donate. Your support at any amount helps keeps us going. Unbuffered is produced by Christopher Mitchell with editing provided by me, Jordan Pittman. Until next time, thanks for listening.